Hello there and welcome to the Thera mod for Medieval Total War 2 and this off-ed abridged commentary of it. This mod changes the world to be this strange map you can see there, and adds all kinds of random factions. It completely changes the faction setup, including twisting times to allow factions from different time periods to exist at the same time. Basically it's just a huge mess, and we're going to see what happens as we go along. As you can see, I've decided somewhat arbitrarily to play as the pirate faction. We start at the top left of the map, although not actually just there. Handily I scrolled the map and noticed we also have this territory in the center. Here's me looking around in case there's some more somewhere. So what we're going to do is pretty much ignore this territory. My preference when you have a split territory is to focus all of your money into one of them and just expanding one of them. So these two settlements, we'll just leave them there. They'll make us a bit of cash. We can set up some watchtowers and then just ignore them and hope they don't get invaded, that sort of thing. You can see the movement range is extremely large in this mod, probably because the map is also extremely large and there's really not that much in it. We're going to be walking across lots of gaps. Anyway, for now we'll just tower up the borders, look around and come back to this area if anything ever happens. We need to decide then what we're going to do with the area we are focusing on. A bit of spying with the tooltip here reveals to me where our border with the enemy is. Looks like it's where that little river crossing is. I say the enemy, I didn't know that those guys were hostile, but they are, as we'll see in a second. Here's the sorts of units we can use. We've got some sort of European pirate units, some Central American units, and some Northern American units. So this continent we're on is clearly supposed to be the Americas, which makes sense given its placement in the map. And we're a kind of pirate nation that's somehow just taken over everything, and we can recruit the people we're occupying into our army. So we're going to have a mix of 3 cultures in our army. That should be handy. I don't know if any of these units are any good. Given the stats on them, they probably aren't. So we're going to be mostly spamming trash, the good old-fashioned technique. But our faction speciality is that we can recruit powerful gun units because we're a futuristic, like European colonial style faction in a largely medieval-ish fantasy world. So you can see here I can recruit a straight up line infantry unit, so we'll bring them along for the ride. Now we're moving into the next turn when I decided to go take a look to the south, and indeed, while just walking through this big territory, found an enemy settlement. It's some Central American style rebels. They've got a decent amount of stuff by the looks of things, and I don't have a decent amount of stuff, but I decided to just go for this anyway. We'll set up a siege and see if anything can be made of this. We can't see the stats on their units, but I figured they're probably similar to mine. Plus we can take advantage of the gigantic movement range to very quickly reinforce. By next turn we'll have a bunch more units down there to help us out as well. And to the north there are also enemy territories, as I'm about to discover, and the method of discovery is going to be walking around with our gigantic movement range generals and setting up towers, but we'll come back to the north later. I got a nice offer from the Spanish, who are on the central continent, or a Spanish faction of some kind. They decided to offer me alliance and a marriage alliance, no less, and I accepted that. So now our eastern border of the place I'm forgetting about is secured through alliance. The rest of the border is just rebels right now, I think, so they won't invade, meaning we are relatively safe to continue ignoring stuff down there. Now I've basically recruited a bunch of units and gradually built up a sizable army there at that siege. Now we've got 3/4 of a stack, and we've also spied out all of our border, and it's all rebels I think at the moment, so we can actually expand in any direction, but we're just going to stick with south since that's where I happened to start going to begin with. Once the next turn comes about and I've got tons of siege equipment, I decided to just auto-resolve this fight because there's not that much to it and I didn't care very much. And that result was probably pretty accurate once tower losses were taken into account. We sack the settlement to allow us to move on faster, and we're going to move on in fact this turn because we can go to the east. I'd already had a spy look around these great open plains and find out where settlements were. So we can see that there's one actually in our movement range right there, stopped to reorganize for no particular reason about halfway, and then we come over to do the siege, and this time it's going to be more serious because there's actually a big army on the inside. A big-ish army anyway. So I'm going to build tons of siege equipment and see how that goes for now. While we wait, we're going to meet some of the neighbours. This yellow faction makes itself known off to our east, spying over our border. I've also sent a spy now to go up north and find out what's going on up here. We can see there's a settlement with no road to it hiding in the mountains, with not much defending either. So that's an easy place for us to send a little detachment off to take. And if the rest of this upper part of the continent is similarly sparse, we can probably grab a whole bunch of territory before we have to do anything too serious against the other major factions. Here are those yellow guys who come over and offer trade and map information, so seems we're on good terms at first. I should have allied to them or something, that would have been useful. They're actually setting up right next to my army. Pretty suspicious, but I was willing to interpret this as them wanting to take the rebel settlement, and they're just sort of queuing to see if I fail, something like that. I've also now made contact with a yellow Spanish-style faction, and we can see from their map information that they control 3 blocks of territory. One of them's on our continent. These guys are actually of interest to us because our victory conditions involve taking out these guys. I checked them shortly after. We have to kill the yellow Spanish faction, the light blue Mesoamerican faction who are to our south, you can see them there on the minimap, and someone else called the Holy Order of Pale Knights or something. Sounds like some Teutonic Knight spin-off is around on the map somewhere, and we'll have to hunt them down. So yes, we need to take out those 3 factions. Otherwise, let's just have a certain number of regions, but I think the number is really easy to get to, so it's mainly going to be about being at war with those factions. Here's me a bit later. After I put together a force to go start our northern campaign, we're stretching our budget here, but we can get more than enough to at the very least take that first place we've discovered, since it didn't look very heavily defended. Back at the main siege, I ended up just sieging them out even after making a load of siege equipment. I just thought, oh, I won't bother, I don't want to lose any troops because I want to move on swiftly after this. So I just sieged them down for like 6 or 7 turns. They eventually sally once they're out of supplies. They're going to be low in numbers because they were dying to siege attrition, but it's still a fight worth doing because I want to minimise our losses here. They've got absolutely loads of archers, and that's going to work to our advantage because we can rush them down. It's not a very balanced setup. Here are our line infantry sniping away at the enemy as they come in. We're probably missing, but it was a nice idea. We've also got 2 gun units in the form of our cav. They're both pistol cav, like pistoliers from Warhammer. I don't know, maybe they're based on a real unit. I don't know this period in history at all. My formation is 3 lines because I've got a double line set up for my generic pirates unit because I figured they sucked. I thought they might just rout right away and I needed that extra line at the back to come in once the first line died. But it didn't go like that at all. The enemy's attack was ineffective, and the fact I had 3 lines was now a hindrance because the back line can't really get in and do some outflanking quite so easily. We're having a bit of trouble because their mass archers are killing our gun cav. I'm eventually going to start just charging in to take them out, and of course turning off skirmish mode is a bit of an issue with the short range gun cav because their skirmish mode makes them fall back from the range they need to fire at, so need to get used to turning that off, I guess. Here we are in melee contact with an archer blob, and because it's all just trash archers, they rout really easily, much easier than I expected in fact. So from here, this battle's pretty much won. We just chase the enemy all the way back into the town, slaughtering stuff as we go, and we take minimal casualties. Stuff starts coming back after touching the town square, but I'm sitting here just shooting guys with the pistol cav. Once they turn back, that's the end of the battle in this case, and that's that. We lost less than 10% of our army. That's what we like to see. The enemy army's totally dead, and this settlement is ours. We're just going to sack it again to move on as soon as possible. We're going to completely ignore the big yellow army standing there. We're going to presume that the yellow guys won't attack me. We are the same religion. Our religion is both serpent gods, so maybe that will help us out with that. What we want to do is take the rebel places that are next to the yellow guys before they do, so they don't expand at our future expense or anything like that. In the meantime, we're now coming in to attack that northern place, and it's still not very heavily defended, so we just need some equipment to be able to get over the walls. Then we can just go and do that assault to get it over with quickly. We also managed to race ahead and just about start this siege up here on this next rebel place, just in time because we did see a yellow army nearby that was probably going to set siege to it themselves. Good timing. There's also another rebel place just to the north. That will be our next target. But we're now ready, since this is the next turn, to attack the place to the north of our starting area. Now they've got barely anything inside, but the balance bar was suspiciously even looking. I was like, this is nothing, our army's way bigger than theirs. I had thought this would be an auto-resolve, but apparently not, so we'll do this one and see if the walls add up to that amount of balance bar power. There are several factors, though, that will make this hard for us. One is that they have some gunners on the wall who have decent range, and they started killing my guys over here to the east. We're just going to pull back here because we don't have to attack them. We can sit at the back, let the enemy just watch us for a bit and attack somewhere else. The issue is I've brought a load of rams, and the rams can't attack these tall walls, unfortunately. Plus there's only one gateway I can get to without going to the other side of the town, which I can't be bothered to do. So I thought I'll go for the one gate I can get to on our side. The thing is, these towers have machine guns inside, or semi-automatic ballistas or something. The towers appear to be way stronger than the usual Medieval 2 affair. So we're being absolutely hammered on the way in. The thing is, we have to get in to one of these gates somehow, so I thought I'll just keep going and see what happens. We do also have one set of ladders that I was setting up to use over there with my Buccaneer unit. But the attack on the gate just doesn't work out, and here's where I gave up. I noticed that the gate is also stronger in this mod. It was taking 1 or 2% damage each time you attack. Usually it's like 8 to 10. So we're sat here for longer than usual, getting killed faster than usual, and by the looks of things our entire unit will die/rout before we open the gate, and then we'll just be stuck, and there goes the ram as it sets on fire. So this didn't work at all, basically, and I just gave up at this stage. I just withdrew everything. I was like, well, we either need siege towers, more ladders, or to just siege them out. So we lost a bunch of troops. And the annoying thing about withdrawing from a siege is you can't maintain the siege, like in some Total War games. In this one, it counts as losing the battle and you retreat, and because our movement range is so big, we retreat really far. So now we're miles away. I actually decided to switch target onto that other place to the northeast because it's a little bit closer, and it syncs up a bit more with what I'm doing over here. Our two armies will end up being close to each other and being able to work together in this fashion. I'm going to besiege them now in the next turn, and this time not focus so much on rams, going for siege towers instead to try and survive those enemy tower attacks on the way in. Although the siege tower setting on fire is a potential issue, my spy reveals that the next rebel settlement along is currently being attacked by a tiny army from another real faction, so we might be about to have some new neighbours up there. Now down with this siege I've already set up, I was looking at it and thinking this one isn't really going to be much of an issue because not only do they not have many troops inside, but it's the lesser version of the defences. It's the lowest level possible aside from no defences. But the balance bar was still kind of the same as the previous battle, so was a bit worried about that, but I thought surely this time we're much more powerful, we can actually do it. And the first thing I checked obviously was the towers. We're in luck though, the towers not only seem to be harder to activate on this map, but when they do activate later on, they didn't machine gun us down. Overall then, we're in business. I can attack the town from 3 directions. The enemy only really defended one of them, so that's fine. We're going to get 2 free entrances, and the gate was much easier to destroy. Plus, while the enemy are sitting around, we can shoot a few arrows over the wall and grab a few early kills. Once we opened up 2 bits of wall and the gate, all those units defending just rushed back to stand on the capture point. So unfortunately this is going to turn into a grindy fight to the death kind of assault, where we're going to lose more men than we need to because the enemy can't rout. So then we set up to attack from 3 directions and just get in on that. There's not too much I can do while the fighting's happening, but I had a few scheme ideas. We can obviously shoot arrows in, might kill the odd enemy, but more than that I wanted to try and use my gun cav. There's no line of sight anywhere, but because the gun cav are a bit above everything, what I hoped I could do is have them kind of shuffle forwards just up to where the melee is, and then start sniping away into it. This worked a tiny bit, but not really. It seems a couple of guys will occasionally shoot forwards. Generally speaking, they didn't do very much, and we just had to grind them the old-fashioned way, losing more men than we need to, but those enemy units aren't that good. Many of them were just archers who we were engaging in melee, so that's all fine. Plus I could throw the general's bodyguards in, and their casualties don't matter so much because they respawn. Here is the eventual result. Lost a couple of hundred men, the enemy lost everything, and we took the settlement. Overall, a much better affair than the earlier settlement assault. After the capture, as usual, we don't want to hang around, we can just move out right away, and indeed we can move out to the north to link up and form a nice big full stack army with all this stuff ready to take down this next settlement. But trouble is brewing because the warriors of Kukulkan, my same religion neighbours who I decided to trust, have betrayed me. Not that I actually made any agreement with them. Suddenly we see armies besieging us. First over in the west in our starting region, so they've clearly snuck up on us there. Also further east, the place that was bordering with them gets besieged as well. And in both cases, it's going to be pretty hard for us to do anything about that, so they really have us here. I was also suspicious of the fact there's this big blue army that appears to be taking a look over at our southwestern corner. So yeah, not too much we can do about this situation because all of our forces are now tied up at the top right corner of our territory. Although an enemy army is nearby, so we could potentially engage them. But I didn't want to end the siege I'm doing. I also didn't want to make the siege attack because I wasn't done making the set of siege towers. So really I just did nothing in that turn and recruited units elsewhere ready to do something later. And then the enemy begin their attacks. First, in our home territory, we have this attack coming in. And I started thinking, well, we saw how powerful those towers were before. So while we only have one unit here, let's see what it can do. It's enough to activate 3 of the towers, so we can start sniping away. And the ideal hope is that the fire shots will destroy equipment. It does seem to me, though, that these towers are shooting a bit less than they were shooting when the enemy were controlling them. Maybe that's just my own bias. But the other issue we're going to face is that with only one unit, the enemy can do what they're doing here. They can just have some guys with ladders go and climb up an undefended bit of the wall, get inside, and then do whatever they want. In this case, they didn't actually do very much. They just stood on the wall without moving. So we ended up lasting to the point when the siege tower came up and dumped some troops onto us, some Jaguar warriors. They're probably better than our pirates. However, we are going to be hitting them with the towers to both sides of the pirates during the fight, which will help out. And that random fire arrow bombardment is probably going to hit the enemy almost as much as it hits us, might even hit the siege tower as well. So now we wait and see what happens. We might as well grab as many kills as possible, because unlike in the disgusting later Total Wars, in a last stand defense in an earlier Total War, every kill counts because the enemy don't regenerate their troops afterwards. We're also killing things that are standing outside the wall with our towers as they try to open the gate. They've got stuff queuing to go through the gate that's gradually being killed. So with the enemy fighting to multiple sides of the towers, we're getting very efficient use out of them because they're shooting in all directions. However, we might as well cut to how this eventually ends. They do open the gate, some more men come up to attack our guys on the wall, and they rout, unfortunately. So while we did kill quite a few enemies, we didn't achieve all that much. With a few more units though, maybe that could have gone better. We killed about a third of the enemy army, and as mentioned, that's a third that's actually gone for good. This will reduce their ability to go on and take our capital to the north, especially after I've recruited some more things into it. So not so bad over there. We go right on to the other battle off to the east. This time we have 2 units, but the enemy army is a bit more formidable and they have more siege equipment. Still, with 2 units, that's more towers to fire, and with archers, that's more fire arrows we can put onto that siege equipment. So I set up, ready to try and stop the enemy once again. They handily all attacked at the same point, which makes things extra good for us. If they attacked from 2 directions or something, this would just be over instantly. These ladder carriers are getting shot to pieces as they set up, very good, but they are also setting up vaguely where my archers are, so we need to do something about that. We also need to do something about the ram and tower coming in, but I was hopeful about that. However, things started to fall apart because while I wanted to move my archers to the other side of the gate to activate another tower and start shooting fire arrows at the siege tower, for whatever reason the orders started cancelling. I can't go over there. so I have to stand where I am, which is partially where the enemy are climbing up, meaning some of the archers will be locked into a melee there. Not so good. We can still though, with the right hand side of the unit, shoot fire arrows at the siege equipment for a bit while we can still see it. We just about get a volley into the ram. It doesn't set on fire though, so I guess that doesn't help out all that much. And the issue we had this time is that the unit coming over the wall is better than the Jaguar warriors we were fighting previously. So our pirates trying to hold them off actually died quite quickly in the fight. Plus, after a while the enemy did give up on ramming the gate, it became clear that they're just going to take over everything. Their siege tower has deployed, my archers were out due to being in the melee, and they're about to get attacked from the other side as well. And now the pirates are doomed, although we've actually killed quite a few of the heavy infantry who came over the wall. And again, that's going to be just because we were fighting below one of the towers off to the left, which was grabbing extra kills throughout the entire thing. However, now that the entire enemy army can get into the town, and it's very soon all over, it actually went worse than the previous attempt. I thought it would go better with more towers firing and stuff, but, well, doesn't matter. That's a shame. We've lost that settlement, and they do also have another army that goes to lay siege to the settlement just to the north of it. Overall then, we've lost 2 and we're about to lose 1 more, but now it's time for us to start fighting back. Firstly, I auto-resolved that rebel place we had under siege. The result was pretty accurate, I'd say, so that's all good. And now, it's time for us to move out. I'm going to reorganize the army and immediately march south, because we can actually relieve the siege nearby. This turn, we're going for a straight-up field battle. The enemy army is apparently a decent amount weaker than ours, so that's good news. And we'll start off the next part of this series with this field battle. We just want to take it in manually to minimize losses, and then go straight on to rampage south and try and get us some revenge. We shall see how it goes and how the rest of the Thera campaign goes as we go forward. So thanks for watching, subscribe for more, and I will see you in part 2.